Let's begin examining India's complexity by introducing its civic holidays, the first being Independence Day. Both the US and India are former British colonies. While the United States declared independence in 1776, India remained under British rule until 1947, which actually means that next year, 2017, India will be celebrating 70 years of independence. The US celebrates its Independence Day on July the 4th, commemorating the adoption of the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776. India celebrates its independence on August 15th, when power was finally handed back to the Indians by the British. The independence of India from Great Britain was coupled with the independence of Pakistan, which in 1947 was made up of two parts, West and East Pakistan. The eastern part went on to become the independent nation of Bangladesh in 1971. So August 15th is also a date which serves as a reminder of the colonial legacy of the partition of India into India and Pakistan, and marks the moment when many of its current borders, both international and some internal, became drawn. The decades-long Indian independence movement was spurred by principles like Swadeshi, self-sufficiency, ahimsa, non-violence, and satyagraha, insistence on truth, combining to ultimately seek Swaraj, self-rule for the Indians. The movement was dominated by some extraordinary individuals, like Mohandas K. Gandhi, also known as Mahatma Gandhi, and the eventual first prime ministers of both India and Pakistan, Jawaharlal Nehru in India and Muhammad Ali Jinnah for Pakistan. How India sought and secured independence is one of the most fascinating and inspiring episodes of modern history, not least to the many other countries which secured their own independence from the British in the years that followed. There are a number of great resources to learn about this era, some of which we are sharing in the further resources section. But our purpose for today, in terms of helping us think about complexity, is that we want to discuss how India's Independence Day and the accompanying partition of the subcontinent, how they relate in terms of the context of India's borders. Now, if you look at the map of the United States, you'll see straight lines all over. Only one of the 50 states actually doesn't have any straight lines in its borders. And I'll let you guess which one. I'm sure many of you already know that. The US state lines were drawn up without reference to the history of the area, of the people living there, the Native Americans. However, when you look at the map of the states of India, you will not find a single straight line. A curious example of just how complicated it has been deciding what is and what isn't India is that until August 2015, last year, India had the world's only third-order enclave. That's where a little part of India was inside a part of Bangladesh, which was inside a part of India, which was inside a part of Bangladesh. In the case of internal borders, many are still being redrawn as larger states are sectioned into new. And there are a number of movements in different parts of the country asking for larger states to be broken up into smaller states. The most recent example of this was the successful succession of Telangana being separated from the state of Andhra Pradesh in 2014. In several places, the borders are also disputed internationally, with Pakistan in Kashmir and China in Ladakh, and also the Chinese in the northeast of the country in the state of Arunachal Pradesh, right up in the Himalayas near the border with China, Tibet and Bhutan. Some of India's most complex issues today, most notably Kashmir, can be traced to this moment in history when the British drew the boundary lines between India and Pakistan 70 years ago in the aftermath of World War II. Britain's domain in the subcontinent was not one entity to begin with. It took the British several hundred years before they built up the scale and breadth of the empire that they would be ruling over by the time India was independent in 1947. Despite the fact that, as we learnt in week one, India has been called India for more than 2,000 years, and the Indians themselves have always had a strong sense of geographical unity, particularly through mythology and through places of pilgrimage, if not ethnic or national identity, for thousands of years. Up until 1947, whilst most of India was directly administered and known as British India, there were also over 500 princely states that maintained independence, yet deference, to the British. The largest and most powerful of these being the state of Hyderabad. Now, the subcontinent that the British left behind was now two nation states, Pakistan, east and west, created to provide a homeland for South Asian Muslims, and India. Just look at a map before the transfer of power and after August 15th, 1947, and you'll see how drastically these borders changed. By comparison, when Great Britain withdrew from North America, it left behind just 13 states, loosely united together under the Articles of Confederation. Drawing the boundaries between these two nation states was an impossible task, and it was inevitable that it was going to lead to enormous pain and suffering. Lack of knowledge of the local area was actually seen as a positive by the British, as no solution could hope to not cause chaos. Which is why Sir Cyril Radcliffe, a lawyer from the UK, without any prior experience of India, was shipped out and given the task of dividing a line between two countries in just a matter of a few weeks. In doing so, he would be separating villages and peoples, communities that have been living in that region together side by side for centuries. And in the case of the western border in Punjab, dividing not just two communities, Muslim and Hindu, but three, Muslim, Hindu and Sikh. The partition of India initiated the largest mass migration in human history. An estimated 14 million people were displaced. And estimations of those killed in communal violence, both in Punjab in the west and Bengal in the east, range from 200,000 to 2 million. August the 15th, Independence Day, therefore recalls a number of emotions for Indians and Pakistanis who celebrate their Independence Day on August the 14th. Tremendous tragedy, but also a new beginning. Gandhi's dream of non-violence was temporarily lost, as too was the dream of a united India instead of two separate countries. But it also marked the beginning of a new era, one where India and Pakistan regained control of their respective futures. To quote Prime Minister Nehru speaking on that very first Independence Day eve,
"A moment comes which comes but rarely in history, when we step out from the old to the new, when an age ends and when the soul of a nation, long suppressed, finds utterance."
The occasion of Independence Day is marked officially with an address by the Prime Minister of India beside the walls of Delhi's Lal Killa, Red Fort. In some ways, this is the equivalent of America's State of the Union address. It's watched across the country and typically, and on the radio, listened to on the radio, and typically highlights the strengths and challenges facing the nation. Families tend to celebrate Independence Day together, many flying kites from the streets and from the rooftops. Kite flying was used as a way of protesting against the British and symbolised the freedom that Indians sought. And now, of course, that freedom has been achieved. It's a cause of celebration having us seeing those kites soaring in the breeze. Our next calendar date is also related to the independence era.